So, Steve Bannon, you have called us the enemy. You have a very different worldview to ours. That's exactly as I just explained why we asked you to come here. What I want to do in the next few minutes is to really try and understand your worldview, your populist nationalism, and why you think it is a better route forward for societies today. And I want to start with one of the cornerstones of this populist nationalism of yours, which is immigration. You want to crack down on illegal immigration, but you also want to radically reduce legal immigration. You are of Irish and German stock. Your forefathers came to this country as immigrants. So can you explain to me why you now think this country's future no longer lies in being welcoming to immigrants?
Well, I didn't say it was not welcoming. About immigration, you know, when this idea came up of what the context of the Trump campaign was going to be is in 2013 with Jeff Sessions. And I said, what we have to do early 2013 was to say, we have to take trade, right, the paramountcy of free trade. We have to take that from number 100 to number 2 in issues, and immigration from number 2 or 3 to number 1. Because illegal immigration and these trade deals are just two sides of the same coin.
I was talking about legal immigration.
No, I'm going to get to legal immigration to suppress workers' wages, okay? The Cotton Bill, that is the one we support, the RAISE Act, I think still allows 500,000 people to come into the country every year. So I'm not against totally stopping legal immigration.
But
what I've said on, hang on, HB1 visas and excess immigration is to limit that so that we can have our African American, our Hispanic, and working class community can finally start to get jobs in the high tech space.
That's
Illegal immigration and legal immigration are nothing more, exactly what the bad trade deals, is to suppress workers' wages.
Actually,
of all races and creeds.
I would absolutely disagree, because if you look at this country, foreign entrepreneurs create 25% of new companies in this country. More than half of American big tech companies are founded either by immigrants or the children of immigrants. Immigration in this country has led to more jobs, more innovation, more entrepreneurship. By cutting legal immigration, you are cutting a source of growth and prosperity. You are going to hurt the prospects of the very people you're trying to help.
The merit-based RAISE Act will cover that. Until we start to get full employment, the issues in inner-city St. Louis, inner-city Baltimore, we changed the entire education system over to STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. Yet we can't get Hispanics and African Americans into engineering schools, and they can't get into Silicon Valley. Until we start to restrict immigration, and on a merit-based system, those entrepreneurs will get here, okay? On a merit-based system that allows the entrepreneurs to come and allows the growth, but takes care of our citizens. Remember, economic nationalism doesn't care about your race, doesn't care about your ethnicity, doesn't care about your religion, doesn't care about your gender, doesn't care about your sexual preference. It cares that you're a citizen.
You say that many times.
A citizen of the United States of America. It's time that we look out for our citizens.
That phrase that you have just said, you say many times, and I'd actually like to press you on that.
Because it's the beating heart of economic nationalism.
And I'd like to press you on that because I want to be quite clear on something. Are you very clear that you make no distinction between the race or the religion of immigrants?
Absolutely not.
Okay, you make no distinction on that. Many of the people who you advise and you consort with in Europe do make that distinction. Matteo Salvini, the Deputy Prime Minister of Italy and the first big political figure to join your new movement in Italy, he has said he wants to carry out a census of the Roma, which is a long persecuted minority group in Europe. And he then went on to say, unfortunately, we have to keep the Italian ones. Viktor Orban, the president of Hungary, has said, we do not want to be a multicolored country. He has called refugees, quote, Muslim invaders. These are the people who are your supporters in Europe. They are very clearly basing immigration on racist. Yes, they are. They said that's what I said they did.
Orban, Salvini, the rest of this populist nationalist movement, outside of things like Golden Dawn and Jobbik, are not ethno-nationalist. What Salvini was saying about the Roma is that it's a way to get the children into the school system. It's a way to take future generations. Let's find you just can't have the Roma where the children aren't getting educated. They're not into the healthcare system. You have to look what these people are trying to make their countries better.
So you are
They're
not
trying to make their
willing-
citizens.
You are not willing to condemn those statements of what those people say.
I'd have to be familiar with the statements. I certainly
I've
do not. I
just
certainly
told you
do
those
not
statements.
condemn Viktor Orban and Salvini. These two individuals
know-
are saving their countries, and that's why they have support, and their coalitions have support of 2/3 of the population.
Mr. Bannon, this
that's
is
why,
exactly why people
hang on.
think you are a racist. Because you may not be yourself, but you refuse to condemn people who are clearly
Viktor
being
Orban
racist.
is not a racist, and Salvini is not a racist. And by the way, the 2/3 of the people in Hungary and the 2/3 of the people in Italy that support that coalition, they're not racist. And they're tired of being called racist. They're not racist. They're people that want to look out for their countries. These are some of the most giving people in the world.
Let's think about what
By the way,
has happened in
I
European
find
history.
it offensive.
I want to put this, and you are a student of history. You're very well known as someone who's widely read. When you look at what happened in Europe in the 1920s and 30s, don't you think you are playing with fire, pandering to these people?
This is not pandering to these people. What you have in Europe is what you have in the United States. In the United States, what we had and the reason for the Trump revolution, the Trump populist revolt, your beloved, post-war, liberal, rules-based order, what your magazine or your newspaper has a fetish for, okay? Forgets.
We'll get on to that in a second.
Hang on. Forgets that it is a system of commercial relationships, trade deals, capital markets, and
You're
a security.
changing the subject, Mr. Bannon. I
no.
asked you about whether you did not worry about the
get to this in a
consequences
second.
of pandering. And let me just tell you, it is not
It is
me
not-
who says
this is
that.
not
Ben Shapiro, Ben Shapiro, former colleague of
Yes.
yours at Breitbart, said, and I quote, "Steve Bannon is happy to pander to those people and make common cause with them." It's not just me who says that. Broadly, you are seen to be pandering to the far-right racist. If you said now you condemn that, you could change it.
I absolutely do not condemn Viktor Orban and what Viktor Orban and his party stands for, what they ran on, and what they're doing in Hungary. I do not condemn what Salvini stood for, ran on, and what he's doing in his country. These individuals and these populist nationalist movements across Europe, okay, are trying to get the sovereignty of their countries back, okay, and save their citizenship. Sovereignty, which I might add, and I don't want to digress, the 10,736-word essay in this newspaper this week to commemorate the 175th anniversary. It's amazing. Everybody should read it. But I just want to mention some words you do not mention at all in 10,000. Sovereignty, terror, terrorism, jihad, crime, defense, trade deficit, income inequality, or radical Islam.
Well, I'm very glad you've read it so carefully. I'm impressed with that.
Because it's detached
And
from
let's-
reality. It's detached from reality. Just like
No.
you're trying to smear, you were sitting here trying to smear Orban and Salvini on
No,
a
I'm
couple
not.
of quotes.
I'm not, Mr. Bannon.
You are. You're saying they're racist.
I am a European. I
just
have
said if
grown
I did-
up in a continent that has enjoyed the longest period of peace since 1945 that it has had in previous centuries. And I look back at the history of Europe. My mother is German. My father is English. I am very, very aware of European history. And I am concerned that your view
Because of
is not
American
cognizant.
security guarantee.
Yes,
If you don't mean-
absolutely.
American
And that's
secu-
absolutely.
It's on the shoulders of the deplorables.
Well,
Oh,
we'll
by
get
the
on
way,
to that in a second.
oh, by
Let's-
the way, that's
we're- we're-
another word not mentioned in the
not-
10,736. Deplorables, whose shoulders upon which everything rests. It's their tax dollars and their kids that saved Europe 3 times,
Let's-
and World War I,
let's
and
not-
World War II, and the Cold War,
I think
and
we-
we'll end up saving it again.
I think we have a clear view on what your perspective is on immigration and what your perspective is of your people in Europe whom you admire. Let's move on to trade, because that's another area I think where you and I have a very different worldview.
In fact,
And
hang on. In this 10,736,
I'm so glad you've read it so carefully.
No. They throw. Was it the end of history guy gets thrown under the bus? Even their policy on immigration gets thrown under the bus. Their policy to support the Iraq War gets thrown under the bus. The only thing they count paramount now is free trade. Free trade is everything. That's the new fetish. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about your new fetish.
I think you read the essay too fast, because you clearly missed quite a lot that was in there. But let's just I spent quite a long time writing it. Let's focus on trade, because I want to understand whether you think higher tariffs are a negotiating tool, or whether you think that the country would really be better off if it had higher tariffs. And I just want to, you were recently asked about this, and this is what you said. You were asked what tariffs were good for the economy. You said 100% good for the economy. They're great for the economy. It's going to rebuild our economy. It's going to bring our manufacturing base back. So do you think America's future is best secured by having high tariffs?
Yes, what I think is that tariffs are a means to an end. What we're doing right now, and you can see this, and this is why the economy's on fire, and this is why blue-collar wages are going to start to come back, manufacturing jobs. You're seeing a reorientation of the world's global supply chain away from China, of which the elites, who were all cheerleaders for China, that China was, as they rose, they were going to get more liberal, more free market. They were dead wrong, okay? What China is not an illiberal. You keep saying illiberal.
Actually, I call it a one-party dictatorship.
It is a totalitarian, mercantilist regime that is every bit as evil to its core as the fascist regimes and the military junta in Japan in the 1930s, and you played into their hands. One of the reasons they are where they are is because of you. What Trump and the populist nationalists are saying, we need to get the manufacturing jobs and take the supply chain back from China. That is why Korea, that is why Japan, that is why the populist, leftist, socialist in Mexico has joined in, and Juncker in the EU have all joined in to join with Trump. And these trade deals are reoriented. So yes, if higher tariffs lead to that, then they're good.
Well, you've made that point clear, and where I think if you'd actually, and it sounds like you must have read some of this quite quickly, we've made a very similar point about China. Where I think we differ is on whether it is the right strategy for this country to have high tariffs in the long term. And you appear to think that high tariffs will bring back manufacturing jobs. And I think it is very hard to find a single economist who shares that view. Just let me finish. What high tariffs will do, they are not the reason this economy is growing fast right now. The tax cut has much more to do with it. What tariffs do is that they raise the price for consumers. They raise the price for people who use imported goods. And they do not really bring back jobs, because even if, let's say, Apple brings back the production of the iPhone here, they will not bring back a lot of jobs. They will do it all through much more capital-intensive investment. It's more inextricably
linked than tariffs, you know that. When Trump was at the G7 and they had that first day blow up, you saw the picture with Merkel and Macron and everybody looking down on him like he's the schoolboy who can't quite learn his lessons, right, doesn't do his homework. The next day, he walked in there to the meeting. He said, okay, here's the deal. 0 tariffs. No tariffs, but no subsidies. Remember, non-trade barriers, it's the state-owned industries that China is investing in, okay? China has exported its deflation and exported its excess capacity. That's why Brexit in 2016 exists. That's why Donald Trump, and we're on the 10th anniversary today of the financial collapse. The financial collapse brought on by the party of Davos in this audience and this magazine, and the rise of China at the same time, all on the backs of working men and women of every race, every ethnicity, every religion in this country and the West.
Mr. Bannon, you're spending a lot of time.
I'm not. That's the beating heart. You talk about just tariffs. It's more complicated than that. It's also, by the way, we would go to 0 tariffs with China tomorrow morning. We've told them that. If you go to the White House and look at the 50 other things they do.
So that's exactly what I started this conversation with. I wanted to understand whether you saw tariffs as a negotiating tactic or as a permanent arrangement that would help the United States. What you said in previous interviews suggested the latter. Now it seems that you are saying that tariffs are simply a negotiating tactic.
No,
we need to move on.
Hang on. I don't want to make sure it's not a contradiction. If we need tariffs ongoing to protect certain industries, I have no problem with tariffs as long it's in the protection of the American workers and not the capitalist.
Well, the
American workers and not the capitalist. No, you're a protector of the capitalist. I'm a protector of the workers.
No, you're not. You're not. You're a full siren for the worker. You're pretending that you're doing that.
That's why the workers vote for us. That's why the workers vote for us.
No, they work because you engender a sense of fear and divisiveness.
It's called they're rational human beings. They are rational human beings.
We're just going to have to differ on what rational human being means.
A rational human being is somebody. A rational human being can look at facts, facts and understand what's going on.
Yes, that's what we try and do week in, week out.
Can I say one thing? Can I say one thing? Because you keep talking about tariffs.
I'm trying to change the subject.
I know you are, but you're going to have to own this subject. We're at economic war with China.
You've made that point several times.
No, but your paper doesn't say that. Your paper says there's some illiberal like trade policy problem. China has brought all forces of national power to be at economic war with the United States and much of the industrial democracies in the West. That is what Donald Trump has said. We are going to now combat.
You've made that point very clearly. I want to move on to something else because what I really want our audience to understand is the full breadth of what your populist nationalism entails. So can we
but
get
since
to
you've made trade such a paramount thing of going forward, your thing, free trade is going to make it a paradise. You can't have free trade where you're up against mercantilist societies that are totalitarian.
We've heard your argument. We've championed something different for 175 years, and I like to think that history is on our side. But let's leave it right there.
Because you keep getting bailed out. No, you keep getting bailed out. You keep getting bailed out by the deplorables in World War I and World War II, in the Cold War, and whatever else is in the future. It is working men and women that have bailed you out and bailed your newspaper out.
We have to move on from that. And I want to go to something else, which is another area where you accuse the capitalist elite, I think, as you sometimes call it.
Party of Davos.
Party of Davos. You say that state-controlled capitalism is basically taking away people's freedom, the freedom of the ordinary worker.
Yes.
Now, I look around at countries which have governments, populist nationalist governments in power, whether it is Hungary, whether it is Poland, or indeed whether it is this country. And what I see is much more arbitrary use of power, an undermining of the institutions which protect the individual, whether it is the free press or whether it is the judiciary. And I can't see that in practice, your populist nationalism does anything other than make it easier to have corrupt abuse of power.
I think the one significant difference between the Trump revolution here in this country and the populist nationalist movement in Europe is around this point. Remember, the three things I laid out in CPAC that are the driving forces of the Trump revolution, of this populist nationalist revolution here, are economic nationalism to protect citizens, and particularly workers, America First foreign policy, so we start to get these foreign wars, that is this kind of expeditionary humanitarianism of the Party of Davos.
Could you answer the question? I'm sorry, we've got very little time left. So do you agree?
No, and the third is the deconstruction of the administrative state. It's the reason Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are on the Supreme Court. They're not about abortion or gay marriage. These people are about the Chevron exemption. They're about deconstructing the administrative state. What we're trying to do for the workers, outside of some regulation, is start to get into a more entrepreneurial society where workers can get a piece of the action. In Europe, because of the history of Europe, there is more people that want to get control of the state, right, and try to turn it around. And I think one of the evolutions in the populist movement that I hope my involvement is to help teach our colleagues in Europe that the power comes from deconstructing the administrative state and letting the workers get a bigger piece of the action through better wages, better jobs, more high-value jobs, and more access to capital for entrepreneurship.
So you would agree that in Europe there is some arbitrary use, some corruption of institutions, and in this country...
I think it's more on the left. I think it's more in Merkel and Macron. But by the way, so as long as people want to get their hands on state power, whether that is Macron's party or Merkel's party,
etc. It's also true in this country. If you look at the deregulation in lots of industries, it's being written by lobbyists. By
the way, I agree with the permanent political class runs Washington, D.C. I didn't say this is an easy fight. Remember, I lose 9 days out of 10. Okay? It's just the reality. The permanent political class in Washington, and they do write a lot of the regulations. That's one of the things we were trying to stop.
Well,
and that's one of the reasons I'm a big supporter of the five-star.
Unfortunately, it seems to be something that is
it's one of the reasons it's one of the reasons I was such a big supporter of the five-star movement in Italy. Because there you had, and their economics is certainly not my type of economics, they're kind of socialist, but they believed in the stopping crony capitalism. They believed in transparency. They believe in all the stuff that Peter Schweitzer and I worked at, throw the bums out. That was their basic thing, and I believe that too.
Let's turn to another topic, which is a topic which is probably one of, if not the most important challenge facing the world in the 21st century. It's one that I can't see how it can be handled at a national level only, and that is climate change. You were instrumental in the US decision to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement. How does an economic nationalist cope with climate change, or do you simply think it's not a problem?
No, I think people have to think through and think of what the real math is in back of the problem. And then I think you have to have a coming together of individual nation states, whether that's through the EU, because I haven't said break up the EU. All those parties we support in the movement want to have the EU as a collection of independent nations, not like the United States of Europe. I think it has to come together. But I don't know how you get into an agreement that essentially gives China a free ride to pollute. and restricts the West. The whole
You
problem.
know that the Paris Agreement did not give China a free
Absolutely
ride.
gave China a free ride. You will always give China a free ride. China had absolute, total free ride. The Paris Accord is a debacle as far as the deal goes. If you want to come back, and if people want to, and President Trump is very open. If there's a better deal that actually works, he was very open to do that, as am I. But I think you miss the threat is not climate change. The threat, besides the inexorable rise of a totalitarian, mercantilist China, which is the central geostrategic issue of our day with the West, it is the convergence. And this is why I'm a populist. I see what globalism did to the workers, okay, particularly in the United States. But this convergence of automation, advanced chip design, robotics, and genetic engineering that will happen in the lifetime of 3/4 of the audience here is going to be the greatest challenge we face in the 21st century, and I think the greatest challenge in the history of mankind. I won't be around, and either will you, to face that. But unless we take back from the scientific, engineering, managerial class in Davos who read this newspaper and take it as gospel truth, unless you take it back.
In that, because you just told me earlier how much you enjoyed reading this newspaper.
I love this newspaper. I've read it every week since I was 12, and the Financial Times. I don't agree with it, but it's the best for as far as the facts go. You just interpret the facts the wrong way.
But at least we use facts. I think the difference is that we use facts, Mr. Bannon.
To your own accord. This convergence, what people call the singularity error, will happen in 25, 30 years or so, is the single biggest threat in the 21st century, unless workers start to take control of the political process in the United States and in Europe. It's going to be a total debacle, because the same geniuses that got us in this spot today are going to be the same geniuses that make decisions on that.
People taking control of the political process is something that liberals have always been extremely keen on. Where you and I differ is in what is the best policies thereafter. We have a very different worldview on what is the right way to reach a more prosperous society. But we have 1 minute, 37 seconds left before we go into questions, and I want to ask you one other question, which is something close to my heart, which is the Time's Up Me Too movement.
Yes.
And you seem quite impressed by the power of the Time's Up movement.
Very.
But you also seem to be rather against its goals. And I'm a little I'm a bit confused by that, because it seems to me that the Time's Up movement should be exactly the kind of thing that you are in favor of, which is an anti-establishment movement growing up to change rules that are rigged against a particular group of people.
I think the way I look at it, if the populist nationalist movement's kind of like the American Revolution, it's about sovereignty and where decisions are made and who makes them. I think the Time's Up, and the Me Too is a subset of that. The Time's Up movement, which I think is enormously powerful, is like the French Revolution. It wants to totally reorder society. And I think it's reordering society, not just against the Judeo-Christian West, but Hindu and Islamic society that are all built on the patriarchy. That's 5,000 or 10,000 years of recorded history. The Time's Up movement is the most powerful political movement in the world.
Are you against?
I don't know what the matriarchy would look like. So right now, I'm open. I'm open.
Whether you are a plain old chauvinist or whether you are actually the radical reformer.
I'm a former naval officer that served in the South China Sea and the Pacific. My daughter is a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point and served with the 101st Airborne in Iraq. She's an Army captain today after serving in Eastern Europe. Probably get deployed, or was going to get deployed back to Afghanistan. She's on the faculty at West Point. I know how to help raise an empowered woman, okay? So I fully understand what the objectives are. And I agree with the objectives about empowering women. I'm quite shocked that the Me Too movement hasn't cut through corporate America with a bigger scythe, because I think there's a lot of potential there. And all I'm saying is that the Time's Up movement, I believe, is the single most powerful potential political movement in the world.
That seems an appropriate place to go to questions. It's an area where we can probably agree. I'm going to open questions here to a lady here in the front row. Could you just wait for the microphone so that our colleagues in London can hear you?
I'm Julissa Arce. I am a formerly undocumented immigrant, also a very proud American citizen. And I'm wondering whether you realize that you're lying to people, or you do it on purpose, in that you tell them that immigrants like me are taking their jobs, and at the same time, you are for tax cuts for the very wealthy and rich people and corporations, where corporations are not for the worker, but they're for the shareholder. And what's really eradicating the middle class is not people like me, It's corporations, corporate greed, the 1%. Oh, and also, since
you
you like
very-
reading so much, I brought you a copy of my book so you can learn more about people like me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would love to have you sign this later if you could. But you did? Thank you.
All right.
And hang on. It's just a fact. Unlimited illegal immigration suppresses wages of Hispanic. I know that, but it suppresses wages of Hispanic and African American citizens. It's why the Chamber of Commerce wants it. It's why the Republican elite wants it. It's just another form of unlimited labor pool, right? They don't mind unlimited competition among workers, whether that's through legal immigration or through trade deals or unlimited immigration. That's just a fact, okay? And by the way, in the White House, I'm the guy in the Oval Office that fought for 44% tax for people making over $5 million. I fought for that, and I lost that fight to Gary Cohn and Steve Mnuchin, who are progressive Democrats. So I fought for that. In addition, the thing I supported on the tax bill was the corporate taxes were to make us competitive with China and Germany, and to start to bring manufacturing jobs back here. I'm not a massive fan of the tax plan. And people understand and know my record and know the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times. I fought every day for workers to get a bigger piece of the tax cut. What my nonprofit is doing right now, we're running analysis on my concept of no tax on labor. No tax on work. Up to $100,000, you wouldn't have to pay taxes on your work. That the capitalist in capital would have to pay more taxes. And that's why do you think the Republican establishment hates me 10 times more than the progressive left? There are many people, okay, 5 times.
Thanks. Wait, no, I would love to continue. We are going to have to give our colleagues in London a
Thanks
chance.
for the
They've
book,
been patiently listening. Daniel Franklin, let's turn over to you with a question from the London audience.
Yes, I see plenty of hands going up here, but I see a lady there. If you could, yeah, keep your hand up. Keep your hand up. No, you had your hand up there. Yes.
So, 35% of, for Mr. Bannon, 35% of 18 to 24-year-olds in the US election in 2016, only 35% voted for your candidate. So, given that in 15 to 25 years' time, these will be the people who are making the laws, how do you propose to change them to your ideologies?
Over to you.
I think it's why I come to forums like this, or why I try to speak everywhere and try to get out. And it's by actions and facts, right? Talk is cheap. Just look at the actions. Look at the actions of what we're trying to do in making this more of a workers-based economy, what we're trying to do to save jobs, what we're trying to do to bring high-value added manufacturing jobs back, what we're trying to do to make sure that illegal immigrants are not brought here as kind of serfs. I mean, that's what for millennials, what you guys are today is serfs. You're like 19th century Russian serfs. Since the financial crash that started 10 years ago today in London with the bankruptcy of Lehman, what the elites did is the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve went from $880 billion to $4.5 trillion. They cut the spigots of liquidity on to save themselves. So if you owned assets, real estate, stocks, any kind of intellectual property, you've had the greatest 10-year run in history. Why do you think this does not talk about income inequality?
I have to interject there. No, I have to interject because it's simply not true. And I wrote a survey in 2012 on income inequality that was 10 pages.
I'm talking about your essay.
No.
I'm just talking about the 10,736-word essay
that
does
you
not
clearly
address...
read from cover to cover.
No, here's my point, is that the elites, the party of Davos, took care of themselves and let the devil catch the hindmost. That is the fuse that got lit 10 years ago. Today is what brought Donald Trump into your lives, okay? Because he articulated, as much as you hate him and despise him and detest him, look at what he's saying in connecting to workers, okay? It's the party of Davos that created Donald Trump. It's the party of Davos that created him to allow him to give voice.
Should we get another question? Because I think there are a lot of people who want to ask you questions.
It comes through actions, ma'am. That's what's going to have to happen.
Daniel, let's get another question.
We have one more here in London, yes. Yeah, sure.
So we had Tony Blair here earlier, and he also spoke about the threat China poses to Europe and the Western world. And his argument was for a strong European Union as a bloc that can strengthen European people. And my question is, why don't you support this idea, since every party you support want to dismantle the European Union and further decentralize Europe and make a stand harder?
The European Union, why isn't that the answer to China, in your view?
Because I think you first off have to have, and I think that's why these parties that are rising, that what they want is not a United States of Europe where you have Italy's like North Carolina to France's Georgia. What they want is independent, 27 or 28 independent nation states with their own sovereignty, where their citizens' interests come first. And I think that since the Treaty of Westphalia, I still think that is the basic building block of where freedom is. And I think that these individual nations will unite like the Judeo-Christian West has always united at the end to stave this off. And that's the great challenge of the 21st century, along with automation. And I think that when you see, when these countries, and there's not one country now for the European elections of next year we're focused on, I have not heard one of the leaders that I'm talking to all the time say they want to destroy the EU. What they want to do is not do Macron's vision. Macron's speech of last year with further integration, further economic integration, further political integration, they want to stop that. They don't want a United States of Europe. They want they want a union, a confederation of independent, individual sovereign states.
One more question from London, then we'll try and get one more here from New York.
The question here, just near the front.
Hi, Steve. I come from Romania, a country under which, former back in the Soviet Union times, the workers had power over the political process, to quote you from before. Can you give me one example in which a country has the power in the hands of the workers and was better off than any capitalist country in the same time period?
Can you give one example?
Yeah, I think, by the way, I think under the American system of the United States in the 19th century, where workers had a lot more power and a lot more freedom, I think that was I think
we might have to clarify that not all workers
not
had
all
a
workers,
lot of freedom
not all
in
workers,
the United States.
a huge, and the West.
No,
but I think that I have a tremendous respect for blue-collar people. I have tremendous respect for workers. I come from a blue-collar family. I think when decision-making is pushed down to workers, and I would argue the fact that Romania or the Soviet Union were workers' paradises, they were basically dictatorships.
One more question here. Yes, gentleman there, third row. This, I'm afraid, has to be the last question.
I'd like to say thank you for coming here today. My question is, was and is Donald Trump truthfully your first choice for your movement, or was he simply a vehicle?
So in 2000, I did try to talk Sarah Palin at one time. Remember, when I first looked at this, is this a sexist audience or what? Where's Time's Up when you need it? The key thing for us was originally to get the ideas out there. That's why I talked to people like Jeff Sessions. That's why I talked to people like Lou Dobbs. That's why I talked to people like Sarah Palin, right? No one ever took the bait. But the key was to get trade, because trade is considered like medieval theology. It's just assumed that free trade works, and it's a radical, radical, radical idea. It destroyed the workers in the United States and deindustrialized our country. I think when Trump came along, he articulated this perfectly. And here's the thing: he knows these issues. If there's any one issue that he knows, it's trade and China, et cetera. So he was to me, when he came along, the perfect candidate.
We have, I'm afraid, run out of time. We've ended on the subject where I think we are just going to have to agree that we have a very different worldview. In fact, I'm quite sure that our worldview is based on the facts, which is that if you look back at the history of trade over the past 175 years, the world has gained from an open trading system. In the post-war period, the world has gained from an open trading system. I'm very sure that a worldview that is based on high barriers, high protectionism, we ran that movie in the 1930s, and it was a disaster.
I want to thank the party at Davos for attending. If you just watch what Donald Trump and Japan, Korea, the EU, and Mexico and Canada are eventually going to do with reordering the global supply chain and bringing high value add jobs back to their countries, you will see where this goes.
We will have you back in a few years when we will see which of these worldviews proved to be the right one. Thank you, however, for joining us here for an interesting discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Honored.